I'm Jessica Strand, and I'm the events director. And no, I am not related to the Bass family. And so store, it is an odd and crazy coincidence, but it is what it is. Tonight we have two wonderful cartoonists from the New Yorker, Victoria Roberts and Arnie Levin. This evening, Victoria will be reading from her delightful new book, After the Fall, which I had the pleasure of reading, and it's delightful, and you all bought it, which was a great thing, and buy more and give them for Christmas. And then Artie, so she will read from her book, and she will show also some work on this screen over here, and then Artie will also discuss his work, and then the two of them will discuss what it is, the ups and downs, life as a cartoonist. Please join me in welcoming Victoria Roberts and Arnie.
Thank you very much.
I can hear you, Victoria.
Here, that's for you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? I've fallen and I can't get up. Thank you so much for coming here. When I was invited to talk about After the Fall, my first novel, here at the Strand, they said, we'd like you to be in conversation with somebody, and I thought, who better but the cartoonists, or as they say, the chef's chef, you know, the place where all the chefs like to go. Well, Arnie Levin is such a person for us cartoonists, and we've got a few of them here today in company Sam Gross and Mort Gerberg. I'm delighted to say thank you so much for coming. Because the iPad is so easy to handle, I'm going to start with talking about my book, After the Fall, which just came out. These are some early sketches. I've had the book in mind for a very long time, about 25 years. And before I begin, I'd like to thank the people who made this become not this scrubby, sketchy thing, but this actual book. My agent, Lindsay Edgecombe, and my agent, Amy Cherry, without who there would not be such a book. Thank you very, very, very much. I'm going to read a little bit from the book, tell you a bit about the illustrations, and then we'll go on to your glorious work. After the Fall. Pops won't sell the Olmec head. My little sister, Alexandra, greeted me at the door. What happened? Oh, thanks for telling me. Sorry. Lead hurts, put you in the driver's seat. Anything? What's disconnected? Oh, here we are. Here we are. Let's start again. Okay. After the Fall. Oh, man. What's going on? Do you have any idea why? Well, it's not. Is it that hard? Or? Okay, that looks good. It's not this part. I'm so sorry. We did run through this, but okay. No, you can't do that for the length of time. Okay. Anyway, while we overcome these great difficulties, I'll tell you something about the book. Uh-oh. No, maybe I won't. Just. let's put it in a place where it'll stay on. Looks right. This looks good. Okay. Starting again. Sorry about this. Okay. Take 2 after the fall. Pops won't sell the old McHead. My little sister, Alexandra, greeted me at the door when I arrived home from the lycée. So did our 3 pugs. Mom says Pops won't sell the old McHead, and we're ruined. She wants to see you too, Alan. Pops wants to see you too. I set down my school bag and walked down the parquet floor to Mother's room. Mother was in creams. She had 2 straws coming out of her nose to make sure her airways were clear. Ahorita no puede hablar tu mami, mijito. Se está haciendo su tratamiento. Or, your mother can't talk right now. She's having her beauty treatment, my son, said Gudelia, closely guarding Mother's door. Gudelia, our cook, raised us in Spanish. We have Mexican accents. Mother was born in Buenos Aires and doesn't like the way we speak. It was my job to walk the pugs at 4. I took them across the street to Central Park, to Cedar Hill, where they met up with their pal Vivian Lee, Vivi for short, a black pug. When I came home, I went straight to Pops's study. He was in his pajamas and paisley robe, reading the Times. He'd just gotten up. Uzbelia, Gudelia's sister, and our housekeeper, had managed to vacuum around him and was leaving. ¿No se te antoja un chocomilk, mijito? Or wouldn't you like a chocolate milk, my son? She asked, dragging the vacuum cleaner behind her. No, gracias. Pops sat quietly for a moment, which made me think I'd forgotten I was in the room. He'd forgotten I was in the room. You wanted to talk to me, Pops? I was not afraid of Pops. He was too absent-minded to even get too angry. Is school over already? He seemed surprised. It's 4:30, Pops. Oh, so it is. We've lost everything, Alan, said Pops finally, his head still buried in the newspaper. Never put all of your eggs in one basket. Even the basket is gone. I tried to get more out of him, but his only reply was, "What is there to understand about everything being gone? When it's gone, it's gone." Pops, an inventor, had made us filthy rich. So how could we suddenly be so poor? Pops invented smokos, the cigarette that isn't a cigarette, and cured almost everybody in the world of the nicotine habit. That's how we got to live in a penthouse on 5th Avenue and 84th Street. Pops is a great inventor. Pops, after Thomas Jefferson, believed that all men are created equal in their necessities, which to his mind are, in order of priority, as follows. 1, potable water. 2, food. 3, shelter. 4, good plumbing. 5, tub baths. Pops set out to alleviate man's suffering by providing said necessities by the simplest means. The temp wing covered shelter, and the ensuite, a pop-up toilet, towel rack, and tub, covered plumbing and baths. Pops got almost all of his ideas from food. He thought about papadums and how they bubble and rise in hot oil. Then he thought about popovers. It is the popover technology which allowed Pops to develop the temp wing. Pops called himself a discoverer, not an inventor. He believed that there was nothing new under the sun, but that we just have to look carefully to uncover what is. Apart from food which inspired him, Pops loved Raquel Welch. The ESBB acronym for Echo Stent and Buttress Builder, a device that travels through the circulatory system and when met with an obstruction creates a buttress assuring the uninterrupted passage of blood through the vein, was inspired by the actress's performance in Fantastic Voyage. Pops didn't believe that time should be measured absolutely. Never Late Again, Pops's two-faced watch shows the official time as well as the time according to one's own perception of time. If you had to be somewhere at 3 o'clock and you thought that would take 15 minutes, the watch would put that into real time for you. Pops also loved to travel, but hated not getting along like a local. He developed Diplomatics, TM, an effervescent tablet. It comes in How to Think Like the French and How to Think Like the Chinese, among other versions. He hoped one day to tailor the brain tonic beyond cultural boundaries to the personal. How to think like your spouse and how to think like your teen are still in the works. This is one of Pops's failed inventions. The mother in the story never failed to criticizing him for not being able to grow hair. This is the Elliot Gould. He was only able to grow very coarse, curly hair. This is Central Park, and this is where the family in the book, After the Fall, live. I was born in New York City and grew up in Mexico and Australia, and I had come back at the age of 29 and I had no work, and I used to go to Central Park and think, what would happen if I fell through the cracks and ended up having to live in Central Park? And that is how the book was born. Australia was a place with a lot of social services and safety nets, and quite different to the United States at that time, even though I'm talking about the 80s. I did not write this after all of these economic problems that have just gone on, nor did I ever think that things would be like they are today. All of the family is located around the little boat pond, and this is Mother's room, and she looks out and controls everybody over the water. And on her right is the Alice in Wonderland statue, which she loathes and thinks is grotesque, and manages to cover the view of it with a wardrobe of her clothes. This is, I spent quite a bit of time in the park when I was doing this, just staying in the areas where the characters lived. And I found this shape as in the root of a tree, which reminded me of a shoe-fitting stool. And that became what Mother does. As they've lost all their money, she says, you don't have to, shopping is a habit you don't have to give up. And she keeps trying on her old shoes on and off again. Across the way is where Pops lives, and right under Fifth Avenue, this is his wing. I was in front of the coffee shop at Alice Curbs, and I discovered this spinach growing in the ground. And from there, I had Mother in the book decide that these guerrilla vegetarians were trying to ruin the work of Calvert Vaux and Mr. Olmsted, and she goes around tearing out whatever is disfiguring the park. And she says that Vaux and Olmsted are rolling around in their graves. This is the sand pit where Mother often has her drinks before dinner. And this is Sis's wing. Sis is a bit of a diva. She has a talk show that the father actually broadcasts. I don't know if you're familiar with this sundial that is at 72nd Street. The pugs are often guests in her show because she has trouble getting guests, and instead of being good guests, after a while in the park they go a little bit feral. Here they refuse to dress up as babies. This is around the corner here is a lady who is a ballerina and kind of mime, and she usually stands very, very still. And if you put money in the bucket, she'll suddenly come alive, do a dance, and this inspired this drawing of Sis, who learns a great deal. I don't know if any of you have seen her. She's quite something. Sis, who is this is her area. Now, I don't like this area of Central Park. It's by the Inventor's Gate, and it's a little ratty, and I didn't like hanging out there. I tried to change Sis and have her live somewhere else in the park, and it didn't work. This story seemed to exist. The characters seemed to be rooted in place, and the work of writing this story was more like an archaeological dig, really, than a creative venture for me. This is Sis's reading rock. The kids in the old days, before the French Lycée moved over to the east side, further east, the kids used to have lunch in this area. And that's where I got the idea, because my brother and I had gone to the Lycée Franco-Mexicain in Mexico City to have him be the narrator of the book, and more on that later. Yes. This is Sis doing theater when they drained the pond. Over a period when they had the marathon, for some reason they drained the pond, changing the environment completely around there. She's doing Happy Days here. And that's the hook. This is where Alan lives. He's near 79th Street, and it's kind of a scary trip to go there. He has to go accompanied by his electric car. And my brother actually did choose this as a gift, an electric car, instead of getting a tent, which is what I wanted. But anyway, it never worked. And it was never exchanged, and my mother said, "Learn to live with your choices." I certainly have. This is the ladies' facilities right next to the coffee shop. I decided that I was going to write part of the book. I would have the sunset and have night in the book, and not being very brave like Marie Wynne, who writes about Central Park in the dark, I sat in front of the coffee shop and waited for this sundown to come, and a very large raccoon came out and got into the bin very close to me, and I was terrified. I thought it was going to take my handbag. And, it was when I spent that time and it got dark, I realized, I felt like I was in the middle of nowhere. Central Park really, I knew Central Park was magnificent, but I didn't know it was this magnificent and this far removed from the energy of the city. And when I left the park that night, it was Fifth Avenue was a real blast, and I was so grateful for the park. And I'll just read you my favorite passage in the book, which is a tribute to Central Park. The Columbus Day Parade turned Pops' study into an echo chamber of float music. Volare was followed by That's Amore and speeches, all tinny, that came and went as each float went by on Fifth Avenue above the study. We didn't go to the parade. With the exception of my trips to the Met, we never left the park. To spend the night in Central Park is to know that it is miles away from the city. It's like going to the Adirondacks or the Hamptons or Vermont without the traffic jam. As the sun sets and you hear the birds and then the rats and other noises, you are very far away from New York City and smack in the middle of it. I didn't go back to school. From that day on, my lessons seemed pointless, almost silly, trigonometry in particular. I realized that I was in an enchanted forest, or rather, that all woods are enchanted, because the more I looked at Central Park, the more I saw, and I began to explore everything around me with a sense of discovery unequaled by folks like Christopher Columbus or Amerigo Vespucci. So I've mentioned a little bit that the characters in the book are from my family. Sis is modeled quite a bit on me, and Alan Benjamin is allowed me to use his name as the narrator. Here we are as children. It's Alan and me and my cousin Lily Roth. The mother, an Argentine firecracker, and her roommate in the village is nodding. Shirley Wright shared a place with my mother before I was born.
Lively.
And this is a pic of Mum. I think she was in Nevada. I don't know what she was doing, getting a divorce or something like this. These are Anglo-Saxons. And my mother, who's Argentine and half Hungarian and quite dramatic, when criticized, would say, "You are so Anglo-Saxon." That was the top insult in our home. Here is my mother with Bob Benjamin, my stepfather, but really my father, as I knew him. And you will notice a resemblance with this poor man in the cartoons. This is one of my earliest cartoons. I had no idea that I was drawing Bob Benjamin until my nephew asked my brother, "Well, what's happening to Grandpa Bob in the magazine this week, Pops?" And that's when I realized I'd been drawing him for many, many years. Can you read that? You can read the caption. He rarely gets a line of dialogue, but when he does, it's a good one. And who is this? Now we go to, I've had the good fortune in my life to work as a cartoonist for the New Yorker, and one of the reasons I wanted to be a cartoonist for the New Yorker is a lot to do with the person sitting right here, Arnie Levin. Can you say anything about, you got your mic, yeah?
Yes, I have. Hello?
Didn't Mort do this drawing?
Yes.
Mort's here. Didn't you try to sell this same idea to the magazine?
This was an early drawing, maybe second or third drawing I did for the magazine. And Mort Gerber.
You need the mic. The mic, because
Oh, and the mic. Mort, who doesn't have a mic, can't say anything. But Mort came in with the drawing, right? You came in with the same drawing, but I had already sold it. I won't tell him what I did.
Is this one of your first drawings?
Yes, one of the first maybe 3, 4 drawings.
Okay. You've done about how many covers? You've done thousands of cartoons.
No. About 700 and something.
Oh, only 777.
And I think somewhere in the teens covers. I haven't brought them all together yet. Yes, this was done on the way, actually, to a cartoonist luncheon on the northern state, and I had to go around all of these things, and this is the way that I work, is a lot with objects, and particularly graphic objects I look for. And there was just something we've seen these 1,000 times, and I just thought, oh, I got to do something with these. And this is what I did, and it turned out to be a cover.
The objects.
Yeah. This one, I had an antique store for a number of years. And one of the things that I loved in antique was the Pilgrim iron. There's just such a beautiful way that they designed their surroundings. And you could see this is not in my usual style. And this came about just doing drawings of these little ironworks. And then I sort of had to figure out something, and I realized that the Pilgrims very much were like their ironware. And it was at a time when in order to draw this and lay this out, and I worked with a brush one of the few times, just to still get that feeling of iron, that hand wrought, and dozens of little pieces of paper and stuff. And they took it, and about just before it was published, they said, "We've misplaced it. Could you redo it?" Exactly. So I did a copy, and then just before it was published, it showed up again. So and I just enjoyed it. I just enjoyed the aesthetics of it. Another one. This is a. Well, it's kind of self-explanatory, except for where the one went.
They're a little hard to see.
Could I what? Oh, I don't know.
It's the gingerbread. I mean the Christmas trees.
These are gingerbread cookies on it.
I'll go to the and the next one.
And the next one.
Yeah,
we moved on to the gingerbread cookies.
Yeah, I actually really wanted to hear about how you came to think of this.
This one, and I've told this story before, but somebody gave me a big bag of Pachysandra. I don't know how many people know what a live Pachysandra is, but it's a plant, and they have, in order to plant them, you have to tie little knots in their roots, something. And so I had this big garbage bag filled with these, and I was pulling out, and while I was pulling it out, I had realized that this is just very similar to tangles that you get into with kite string, electric cords, and this is one of the few things that man cannot solve by logic. There is no way. And so I had that idea, and I looked, like I said, I like graphic things, and I thought, what could I do with what graphically could this be? And I remembered always loving the little Christmas lights with the green bases and all the little colors and stuff. And I remembered, so I thought, all right, so here, we'll make this into a pre-Christmas cover. And I added that on, and there's also a point in there which also kind of tickles me, is that when you're doing this, it's an act of faith. And you come to a moment when you have to decide, is this worth it? You can't cut an electrical thing to solve the problem. Kite strings you can get a big thing out of, but the electric. So I sort of had him pose at the moment. He's gotten some done. He's now contemplating, how critical are these Christmas lights to Christmas? Anyway, that was.
And this is
this is another one.
What happened here?
Yes. Well, the way that I came out with this, I took a boating class. I won't go into the details of it, but one of the things that, and it had all these flags, and I said, gee, these are great. I love these flags. I got to do something with them. So it was actually started horizontally, and I just put them on the line, and the phone rang. And as the phone rang, I got up, and I kind of walked around the table, and I'm kind of talking, and I looked down, and I realized it was horizontal. And I said, wait a minute. I said, it does look like a clothesline. And then just about that time of year, because I live down by the water, when people are boating, and they must have to wash these things somehow, And so I made the little guy using the wash. Well, but what I had to do was make sure, I had to take all the distress signals out, because I knew the New Yorker was going to check this. So I took the distress signals out. I made sure no two flags, said anything, suggestive in it. And of course, I did get a note from the checking department, and they said, "Have you checked?" I said, "I've checked every one of these guys, But and it only took me 2 drawings. I mean, it was like that looked like the rough, only neater, to do. So some of these sometimes take 2 drawings. Sometimes they take 30 drawings for it to come out. It's like they say watching a knuckleballer. How do you catch a knuckleballer? You wait till the ball stops rolling and you pick it up on it. That's the way these are. You can work on it and then you just leave it.
Well, I think this one is one of your very first drawings.
That is the first drawing.
It is the first drawing. Could you talk about how that happened?
Well, it happened, I was out of work in the film business. I was in animation for a long time. And not having any work, I stayed at home and just drew. I didn't know why. I just drew these big drawings. And anyway, this was one of the drawings I had. And Bob Bleckman originally just had taken over the New Yorker as cartoon editor. And not Bob Bleckman, Lee Lorenz. And Bob Bleckman said to me, "Why don't you submit some drawings to the New Yorker?"
Were you doing a course with Bob and Charles Slackman?
Yeah, actually, I did the course. Yes, I had done a course with Bob and Slackman, a night course, and at the School of Visual Arts, and so this was anyway, I submitted a bunch of sketches, not this one. And Lee said, "Okay, do a finish on these 2. I said, "What's a finish?" Because I was used to animation and the finishes. So, Lee called me up. I dropped this, my portfolio. He had never seen my portfolio. So I dropped it off, and then the phone rings one afternoon, and I'm asleep, naturally. And I picked up the phone. I was expecting a call from somebody, and I said, "Hello?" And this voice says, "Hello, this is Lee Lorenz from the New Yorker." It was one of those moments, "I'll get him, hold on." He said, "Yeah, he's in the other room." But, so, all right, this also, it's fun how little things can change your whole style. I was in an area for a long time where everything was heavily graphic, and you had to be concerned about every line being in so-and-so. And when I did this, and I had been doing animation, as I said, and this was, I did a toad talks about warts. It's a wart remover commercial on it. And I had to present it to this group of people who sat there like this, and I had to talk about this toad, talking about warts on it. And of course, the ABC told us that it defiled the man in white rule, even though it was a frog dressed as a, where ensued a great number of funny letters back and forth. But anyway, this was also, I think this was the third. This may have been the first one I did with a caption.
And please note the noses now and the noses as time goes by.
Okay. That's kind of self-explanatory. Can you see any of these? It's very difficult, I know.
Oh, man. I'm sorry. Turn down the lights. Yeah, that might work. See if it's better. This one doesn't have noses. It's not a good example of that. Oh, much better. Great. Can everybody hear? Good.
This one I like, but trying to draw those trees drove me crazy. I cannot figure those guys out. This one got a lot of letters. A lot of hunters did not understand bird in flight. It's the Brancusi sculpture, and wrote nasty letters to that effect. That does not look like a duck or a chicken, whatever they shoot out there. Okay. I don't know what I can say about that. It's sort of self-explanatory. I just wanted to do something with a toe tag. I think it
starts
during
with
the
a toe tag.
6 foot under era. I thought toe tags were fun.
I chose this because it's my favorite.
Relax, I've come for your toaster. I think that's explanatory. That was fun. And
they have a story for that.
Now here's one. Where did this come from? I was with my wife in a department store, and she was checking out something, and the guy said to her, yeah, do you have any identification? If you have a driver's license or a gun license, that's fine. Supposing I don't drive, should I take up shooting so I will have an identification to this? That's sort of self-explanatory. Yeah. Okay. That's one of my favorites. I just like it.
You originally had the caption in English?
Oh, originally, yeah. When the Monet show came, I said, well, I have to do something for the Monet show. So I went and I looked and I looked and I looked and I said, I know what this outdoors is like, Where's the dragonflies? Where's the, no frogs, no little dipping things and stuff like that. And so I put the frog on. Originally I had it, he said something like beat it or scram. And I don't know if it was Lee who put on the title, but it just, this is the only title they've ever changed on me with it. Say something over and over again, and after a while it'll make sense. This one. Oh, first they do an online search. Save all the original packaging in case we have to return something. We save all it. This looks like my studio now.
Do you want to read it?
Oh, yes, something colorless. I'm being guillotined.
Can you read it?
Things are not. Oh, most of these pelts were suicides. It was in reaction to some news article saying things weren't really as bad for the animals as it seems. Okay. Have you seen a whale that matches this watch? Which started out, I had to find something to do with a swatch. I found a little piece of swatch with that little thing around it, you know. And I said, it just seemed so silly. So I said, I got to do something with this. And how I got to that, God only knows. But anyway, that's... The horse is nice, but we really could use the blender. Let's see, who had the canary?
Is that the cartoonists at lunch there?
The what?
The cartoonists.
The cartoonist lunch, yes.
Okay, well,
yeah, just speculation, you know. This was an early one.
This is an earlier one that you also did one with benches, didn't you, in a similar way from the Cedar Tavern?
Oh,
The
yeah, I
cedar.
did a drawing years ago of
Which?
a row of benches, a row of stools. Could you roll it back? Like these, actually these. And there was a guy who was pushing one of them, and they were all going down, you know. But the story behind it was that I had a coffee shop at one time in the 50s, and I had a partner in the coffee shop, and we went down to this. Yeah, this was things that were filmed
sorry.
at the coffee shop.
There's the coffee shop.
That was Kerouac reading. It was up on the Seven Arts Coffee Gallery. Up there. But anyway, when the beatniks started to come over to the Cedar Bar, which was over here on University Place, where all the painters were at that time, the painters started to get very testy about it. And there were a couple who were provocateurs, and they happened to provocateur on my partner, John, who was an ex-longshoreman. And John picked the guy up and sat him down on the chair, at which point he went over, and then all the chairs went over along with it. So it finally ended up as a cartoon a long way, you know, around. But that's me dancing.
At the
You
coffee
probably
shop?
don't recognize me with the hair. But, that was one.
Was there a Rent a Beatnik?
Oh,
gig
yeah.
that you
Well,
had?
it's another story that went with this. I lived in a house, an apartment, behind an apartment, a little house on 11th Street in Avenue B. And I was leaving, and there was a young lady, a lady of the night, who lived downstairs. And I was leaving, and she said, "Would you like to make 20 bucks? And all you could eat and drink." And I said, "Yeah." And they had rent-a-beatniks. I don't know if you remember the rent-a-beatnik craze. When these guys would get together, and people would come down from Larchmont and places on buses and trams and stuff. And so they had to have local color. And they had a folk singer, they had a poet, so forth. So I was the local color. Since I lived only a few blocks, this was in a building on the Lower East Side, an industrial building. And the guitar player, you know, and I was eating and drinking and stuff, and I was sitting on the floor, and people were dancing, you know, and I could hear this guitar player, and I started to listen to him, and I said, you know, this guy's good. But I couldn't see, I could see the bottom of his legs here. And so we left together, and we had to take the elevator out on a ledge. This industrial elevator came up, and we were waiting, and I said to this guy, you know, I hear Woody Guthrie, I hear all these people, But, you know, you got something special. I don't know what it is. I can't remember what you were singing because it was hard to follow, but you got something special. And he said, you want to go over to the West Side? And I said, no, I don't do the West Side. And about 3 years later, I was passing the 8th Street bookstore, and I looked, and there was, and here's that little that guy that playing the guitar, you know. And it was Dylan, and I guess he did do okay. What else? Is there anything else, or we covered?
No, I think we have covered everything except when
This
when they
was at the
attacked.
coffee shop.
Yeah, when they punched out what's his name again?
Gregory Corso was
Gregory
reading. I was
Corso.
standing next to the photographer when this was taken. And that's Kerouac in the corner, Ray Bremser and Bonnie Bremser, Louis Smolovich in here. And just as he had his hand over there and he was reading, and he said something about Spade Angel, and this guy leaped out of his chair and started smacking him. A second later, I still don't know what that was about, but this ended up as one of the photographs in it. I think Burt Glenn took this, but that's about it.
That's all our show and tell, and
Show and tell.
we wanted to see if anybody has some questions or topics you wish us to discuss. We might have the lights up. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions?
Very bright, isn't it?
Any answers? Take my one.
It's
Maybe we'll share this one.
sure.
Or I'll bring it back to you.
Arriba a mi derecha, abajo a mi izquierda.
They're all laughing and enjoying it so much.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful.
Oh, here.
No.
Here.
And you wanted a question?
Do you ever give each other ideas?
Try not to. It's a dangerous practice indeed. No, as a matter of fact, I can't remember if I've got an idea. I'm thinking about it. All cartoonists are always together and stuff. Nobody's dropping good pieces, you know. So.
Add something to that. Lee Lorenzi used to edit the cartoons, told me, however, that there is a synchronicity to the cartoons that are submitted every week. And he says it's as if everybody got together and decided that the subject is ice creams this week. So if there does happen to be some sort of psychic thing going on.
Well, like Bobbin. They ran.
No, not currency. Not to do with currency, just to do with...
I was wondering, how has your guys' work changed with like the way technology has changed? Do you find yourself adapting with technology and things like Photoshop and Illustrator, or do you still work the same way you did 20, 30 years ago?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I love the technology. And I started with computers in 1986, and I've been working with them. And I do an awful lot of drawing on the computer. The only ones I didn't draw, any of the originals for the New Yorker or anything for the New Yorker were always done in pen and ink. But for other purposes, I use the computer. I'm developing a whole new style from the computer now, just trying to figure out what to do with it. I love it. It's just a, you know, I can't say enough about it. I just think the opportunities and are just great, you know.
Like a Wacom?
I use the Wacom pad. Photoshop and there was something called Pixelmator. Did anybody remember Pixelmator? Came out briefly. It was a ripoff of Photoshop, and they were selling it for 25 bucks. But it has, if you ever want to do real pen line, it has much better pen line than Photoshop on it. So I work with that, and then I transfer it over to Photoshop, because for some reason the action is better.
I don't use it that much. I scan work and send it. But it's actually, Arnie was the first person to have a computer when he was doing animation, remember, on the Amiga? A long time ago, and forced me to buy my first computer very long time ago, because we were all resisting. I like doing film on the computers.
Victoria, I just wanted to ask, when you started at The New Yorker, and how, were you drawing a lot before you started at The New Yorker, or how did that happen?
I was very fortunate because I lived in Australia, and I started kind of working when I was 16, and then when I was 19 I had a cartoon strip called My Sunday going in a newspaper that was like The Village Voice, and that was picked up by very luckily Chatto and Windus, who commissioned a book of them, and then who published them in Dutch of all, in a something called Vrij Nederland. I don't know. Oh, we have a Dutchman. How do you pronounce it? I don't know. So I really had worked a lot when I came here, and I didn't really come here to do cartoons. I wanted to run away with the Wooster Group, and I still want to run away with the Wooster Group. They had come to Australia, and my boyfriend worked with Philip Glass on a festival that they brought LSD to Adelaide for that festival, and I could go for free to see it, and I loved the piece, and I just saw it over and over again. So I applied to Liz Lecomte to watch them develop another piece, and they used to develop pieces, and people were allowed in. So, but I still had to earn a living, so I tried The New Yorker, and I tried, and I only for about 2 years, which is not a very long time, because I think it took George Booth 10 years. I had a friend, Bruce Petty, who's an Australian cartoonist who got an Academy Award for a film called Leisure, and he said, show them that you have a whole world of work. Don't just drop off one or two, show them. So I got in when I was about 30. If only I'd seen you last week for my 30th birthday. Not really. I think it was, it's about 25 years ago when I was in vaudeville. Let's
take two more questions. Did you love this woman before, and then I'll go to you. I promise. You are not forgotten. This woman before, I didn't get you.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask Victoria, you burst into different languages. What, as you do in your wonderful book, how does that inform your work, do you think? Or does it? Is it just that it's you, or your love of language?
I think I love character, and I love dialogue. And I always think that people are described by the vocabulary that they own and use. So I guess most of my work really does come from that. I think I went to a French school between, I guess, 8 and about 11, something like that. And I had never been to France. When I went to Paris when I was older, I found it was very evocative, and I think it was because I remembered the language, that time from the language. I keep them a bit compartmentalized. I feel fortunate to know Spanish because I grew up in Mexico City as well, and French because of the school. But basically, my real interest in any kind of language is because somebody is saying those words, whatever language they be in.
Hi, this question is for Victoria. When you were writing this book, was there any sort of transition between you being a visual artist into like translating that into the written word?
I don't feel like a visual artist at all, as Sam will attest to. I pretty much draw I know that sounds very odd. But I don't think there was really a transformation. I kind of, visually, I knew where the people were in the park, so I had that hook. I knew who the characters, the characters sort of do the work for you. So it's kind of, they both work together, but I'm really thinking about dialogue all the time.
Thank you both so much. Thank you.
Thank you.